Okay, sorry, I was like coughing right now. So we're gonna be watching the fourth part of the Khosrau series by Extra History called Trolling Justinian. So let's see what's going on over here.
Truce signed by Khosrau and Justinian in 532 CE had no expiration date. This peace was meant to last forever. But after that nonsense the Romans had pulled with that barbarian adoption proposal, Khosrau knew better than to trust them. Justinian had been meddling in his affairs, and Khosrau had proof. His loyal Arabic ally to the south had sent Khosrau a copy of a letter he'd received from Justinian, promising him gold if he would switch to Justinian's side. Then a group of Turks had arrived in Khosrau's court, with another letter that they claimed Justinian had sent, telling them that Rome would be grateful if they invaded Iran and created some havoc. Khosrau sent copies of these letters back to Justinian and warned him that if this behavior continued, their treaty was over. But Justinian denied everything. Hey, K-Man, these letters aren't real. Chill out. Yet the hits kept on coming. Envoys from the Visigoths stumbled into Khosrau's court, begging for help against Romans who had been beating them up over in Italy. They said, "Do you really think that a man as greedy and ambitious as Justinian won't try to conquer your country as soon as he's done conquering ours?" They urged Khosrau to strike, right now, while the Romans are still tied down in the west. News of Justinian's abuses all
Yeah, I think it's interesting this weird parallel between Justinian and Khosrau. Um, because I feel like they're both like, for instance, the Khosrau's like kind of bringing this golden age to the Sasanian Empire at the moment through his reforms and many of his other acts, while Justinian is also kind of bringing the Byzantines to its greatest extent, the Byzantine era of Rome, with, having Italy. This is the same Justinian, right? Okay, basically, almost restoring the Roman Empire, or at least coming closer than anyone has ever come, at least to its fullness. So, he's also responsible for the Byzantine era of Rome reaching its greatest extent. So in a weird way, there's a lot of parallels between the two. And I kind of like I said, it's the perspective thing. When we're following Rome videos, it's definitely like Rome is against the world. And, everyone is kind of like how Dovahati perfectly shows. Rome is the bastion of greatness, and everyone just wants to kill them, which is kind of true. But it's definitely interesting to see through an outside perspective, a non-Roman perspective, as it's showing here. Khosrau seems to be vibing, and then Rome, Justinian seems to be poking the bear, if you would, and really trying to almost antagonize them, like at least as it shows here. So it's definitely interesting to see an outside of Rome perspective, because I feel like a lot of the videos we watch are just purely through the Roman perspective, because we're always just following Rome. So this is interesting, because it just comes across like Justinian's being kind of a jerk right now, and almost wanting to like have a conflict, So, yeah.
also trickled in from Lesser Armenia, where the Romans had begun demanding taxes so high that the Armenians rose in revolt. The first Roman general sent to quell them tried to turn them against each other, only to screw it up and get killed in the first major battle. The second Roman general lured the Armenians into a parley, before treacherously killing their ambassador. The Armenians fled to Khosrau's court and begged him to help. Peace treaty or no, this had gotten out of hand. Khosrau asked a Zoroastrian fire temple to check the auspices for him, see if God would support him making war on the Romans. The fire temple said, yep. Which is no surprise. Historically, God generally tends to agree with kings, at least when they ask their priests nicely. And that was good, because with this, Khosrau could assure his court that he wasn't breaking a treaty. No. He was leading a holy war. See, throughout this entire period of peace, Khosrau had been getting ready for this. After that adoption insult and the wrench Justinian threw into his succession, are you kidding me? Khosrau was primed for revenge. But he wasn't just gonna beat Justinian. Oh, no. He was going to humiliate Justinian. and have himself a good old time doing it. Khosrau swept into Roman territory at the head of a giant army, signaling that the eternal peace had officially expired. Eternity, it turns out, is really just about 8 years long. But he had to move quickly because Justinian's army would not be stuck out in Italy forever, and fighting an army is way less fun than sacking an undefended countryside. So rather than taking the time to lay siege to every single town he came across, Khosrau gave them a simple choice. Just surrender and pay me a bribe, or I will kill every single one of you. One town chose to resist. After that, the other towns did not. Khosrau took that city bribe money and then used it to bribe Justinian's army. The soldiers appointed to the east had been complaining for years about how underpaid they were, and now here was the Shah of Iran offering them money and glory by the handful. Roman deserters poured into Khosrau's army. This lightning campaign through eastern Rome had one goal in sight: Antioch, the wealthiest and largest of Justinian's cities in the east. Ever since an earthquake struck just a few years prior, Justinian had poured vast amounts of gold into rebuilding and restoring its former glory. So naturally, when Khosrau swept into the city and they refused...
Yeah, so Khosrau definitely just wants to humiliate him. Yeah, Justinian definitely did make a lot of moves to antagonize Khosrau, and I do think, at least I'm assuming, I have no backing for this whatsoever, but obviously maybe he saw Khosrau as a threat and was trying to undermine him, because he's like, oh, I can't have a competent potential enemy. Like, it's better if, like, my enemy rulers, you know, the rulers of rival empires are dumb, like, you know? So definitely trying to undermine someone who could potentially be a huge threat, you know? But, yeah, the thing is, Khosrau overcame all of Justinian's underhanded tactics and is now trying to just get, you know, revenge and stick it right back, so... Definitely an issue that you could say it was inevitable. Rome and the Sasanian Empire were definitely going to fight again. I feel like it was inevitable, but maybe Justinian pushed it a bit too quickly with some of his moves, because I know obviously more different. He has his hands full. Rome has its hands full already, trying to restore, you know, its former glory in a sense. Justinian's whole goal was to restore Rome, right? And as much as he could from the west, so definitely this other issue that he kind of helped create more eastward probably wasn't good, because it creates like a two-front issue now. You know what I mean?
Used to pay his bribe, he knocked down every single building, except for the church, enslaved the inhabitants, and went on his way. Justinian was reeling, and now the quick capture of Antioch had him on the ropes. The western troops he'd been counting on had been delayed by a stubborn general pursuing personal glory over in Rome, with no army coming to his...
Belisarius. No, Belisarius is awesome. I'm still upset over the Belisarius series by Epic History. Belisarius got screwed over so many times, it wasn't fair. You know what I mean? Oh, man. It was really Belisarius and his genius that helped restore so much of the western portion of Rome, you know? I also hate how much Justinian disgraced him. Like, I'm telling you, Belisarius was a true trooper, and he deserved better, in my opinion. So yeah, watching that series really upset me, because I didn't like what Justinian did to Belisarius, and how he treated him at times. Because Belisarius was just doing his job, and yeah. I'm sorry, I'm gonna die on that hill. Like, Belisarius deserved better.
His aid, and cities falling left and right, Justinian did the only thing he could. He sent envoys to beg for peace. The envoys told Khosrau that breaking their treaty was kind of a jerk move. What had Rome ever done to deserve such treachery? Khosrau showed them the letters Justinian had sent to his allies, trying to turn them against him. And the envoys were like, alright, yeah, that makes sense. Look, how about we give you a whole bunch of money, plus a nice big yearly tribute, if you will just knock it off and go away. Khosrau agreed, and sent them running back to Justinian. Now, the Romans believed that this new treaty began the moment Khosrau said yes, but it turns out, no. As far as Khosrau was concerned, the treaty wasn't official until the Romans paid up, and until that happened, he was gonna turn his campaign up to 11. Now, instead of capturing Roman cities, Khosrau began turning them into his own private resorts. He marched all the way to the Mediterranean Sea just so he could swim in its waters like the great shahs of Iran's ancient past, sending Justinian a reminder of just how far Khosrau had come and how little Justinian could do to stop him. Then Khosrau took over a town.
What a power move. The dude really said, I'm gonna have a beach vacation on your territory. What a baller, dude. Like, that's just called power moves. Oh man, if like cameras were invented, he'd be sending him photos. Be like, yeah, just, you know, selfies on the freaking Byzantine Mediterranean shores. Oh man, that's hilarious.
And paid them to stage a special day of chariot races, just for him. And he happened to know that Justinian was a mega fan of the blue racing faction, so Khosrau fixed the races to make sure that the blues suffered.
Wow, these insults just going. He really is trolling him. Dude, Justinian's reeling. He's like, man, maybe antagonizing this guy wasn't the best move, at the moment. But that's amazing. Khosrau's such a troll. I love that.
Suffered an embarrassing loss to the rival Greens. He went on like this from town to town, demanding tribute from everybody and making Justinian look like a fool. He even took another swing at trying to capture Dara, that old sore spot between Iran and Rome, although once again Dara survived the attack. Then, finally, Justinian's stubborn general returned from the west with his main army, and Justinian was like, okay, screw your treaty, we are doing this. Now, Khosrau still had all the people he'd enslaved back at Antioch, and he'd kind of been counting on this treaty as an opportunity to sell them back to Justinian, but now he was stuck with them. After giving it some thought, he decided that he would take them back to Iran and build them a new town. Resettling captives from defeated cities was an old Iranian tradition. It was a great way to add a bunch of talented craftsmen to your population. Many shahs before Khosrau had done exactly that. But our Khosrau, he liked to go above and beyond. He named his new city Antioch Khosrau, which translates to Khosrau's Better Antioch. He recreated that city down to the smallest detail, from the layout of—
Holy crap. Dude, I'm telling you, the power moves this man is making. He's like so much flexing. He's like, here, look, Justinian, not only did I destroy your like favorite city, but now I've taken its people and reestablished it and built it again, but in my territory. Like, what the? This is the most unique trolling I've heard in history. Like, wow. Wow, dude. Khosrau is insane.
The streets to the number of rooms in each house. Even the building materials were the same. Then, Khosrau freed the captive Antiochians and sent them to live in their new city. They were astounded. Khosrau asked one random citizen if he was happy to see his house again, and the man replied, "Oh yes, this looks exactly like it. Although, I do miss that mulberry tree that used to be in my front yard." The next morning, the man woke up to find a mulberry tree planted in his front yard.
Dude, this PR campaign is insane. Are you kidding me? Dude, I wish I could get, like, sacked and then reestablished to literally my own house, but in a different territory. Holy crap. That's amazing. This man, all frauds. This PR campaign from Khosrau is winning. Like, I'm kind of amazed by him right now. Dude, Justinian, like, he's falling behind so hard.
Khosrau's message to Justinian was clear. Your soldiers choose me, your towns choose me, and your people choose me. Get wrecked, son! Justinian now had his army back, but Khosrau still had him outnumbered. For a while, the Romans attempted small raiding expeditions, staying very, very far away from any direct confrontation. That wouldn't do. Khosrau gathered his army and marched on Jerusalem, prepared to take the battle directly to Justinian's face. But while he was still marching to Antioch, a dark shadow crept into his army. Khosrau's men began to burst out in boils. Their skin decayed. They began to vomit blood. A plague from the land of Egypt had stretched out its hand and brushed both armies with decrepit fingers. The Romans shrank back into their cities. Khosrau and his army retreated north, looking for sanctuary, but the disease had already swept through his ranks. And worse, it had even closed its grip around Khosrau himself.
Yeah, I just remembered that from the Belisarius series, the plague, holy crap. Dang. Talk about timing, right? Like, things were going really well for Khosrau there.